Hi Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Rod, or should I say good evening? I'm well, here we are. It's episode 22222. I think I've got enough twos. And it's the 22nd, so another two twos, of April, and it's 2026. And here we are in the evening recording. I've got some beautiful sunshine. We're recording a little bit early, though, because one of us is departing the country. You lucky person. And the other one of us isn't departing the country.
Well,
and he's going to be doing jobs around the house probably when we would normally be podcasting.
To be fair, you did get away before me. Mine's not entirely pleasure. I have got to do some work first. It is work in Berlin, which I will take it on the chin as not being the most demanding of work. It is a conference, so I've got to go and do networking with colleagues. We've got to present some scientific stuff, so it is still work.
For those listening, I rolled my eyes. I would love to go to Berlin. It's a place I've never been, but really would like to go. So, it's on my list.
I have been once before for a bigger conference, and I was really impressed with Berlin. There's an anecdote I'll share with you offline someday about what happened in Berlin as I left the conference, which I'm sure you'll very much appreciate. But no, it's a good city, great transport links, nice people, good food. The beer was all right as well, as I recall last time. Not that I drank too much of it because I was there for work, and after work, such is life. And then on Sunday, I'm off on holiday myself, so I'll report back about my destination and travel planning and gadgets and what might have changed between here and there since last I went on this kind of travel when I get back.
Don't install a beta on your phone before you leave the country. Yeah,
I have learned that. I'm very scared of betas now, it must be said. In fact, I'm so scared of betas, when they come around to WWDC, I might be thinking twice.
Yeah, I'm just going to plough straight into it. I'm not even going to deny that I'm going to install it.
I will say, this has put me in the horns of a dilemma, actually. Maybe we should do a little bit of this in the main show. Ask me about my iPhone in the main show, and we'll go through that just before we get into the main topic.
I will try and remember.
We'll see how we get on. So let's do some follow-up.
Let's do it.
So first up, we have a story about Apple's antitrust type stuff. They've had a lot of these over the years, but this is yet another one. And this is them facing off against India's antitrust regulator, which I don't know if we've had on our regular roster of people before. We've had South Korea, we've had the UK, we've had America, we've had Denmark and Sweden. I don't think we've had India.
No, I'm not sure we've had India either. I'm amazed India wants to go there, seeing as Apple are currently relocating a lot of its manufacturing to India. Yeah,
but it's for a lot of money, to be fair. So Apple could potentially be fined $38 billion. That's billion with a B, which is probably...
I did notice that in the article, billion with a capital B.
Yeah, and that's like a good Thursday for Apple these days, I think, really, isn't it? I mean, I'm being slightly facetious about it, but that's like a quarter on just the iPhone, $38 billion.
That's a lot of money, isn't it, to most people? Well, to literally any other company other than Apple.
I can't envisage $38 billion, but we're in the hundreds of billions now for their sort of quarterly stuff, as I recall. That's maybe that's iPad on a Wednesday, like I say. I don't know. Anyway, the long and the short of it is they're refusing to declare some of their finances to the Indian Competition Commission, which is the CCI, which they have to do as part of sort of their ongoing, where does their earnings come from in the country. They're refusing to do that because of an ongoing court case about something else to do with, surprise, the App Store and what people have to pay in terms of commission in the App Store. They're refusing to declare that, and even though their smartphone share in India is only 4%,
it was 4%.
It was 4%.
Doubled to 9%.
Almost 9%. Yeah, because they're refusing to declare this, they're facing this potential $38 billion fine. This feels like the kind of thing that they're going to work out to me. They won't end up paying this.
They never seem to end up paying anything, do they? Or if they do, they negotiate it down. It's as if Apple have got like a monopoly or something, and they're trying to safeguard it.
They don't have a monopoly because there's another smartphone in the market that also has an app store. So how can they have a monopoly, Chris? In fact, Android smartphone share of app stores is larger.
It's way larger, but if you do have an iPhone, though, there's nowhere else you can go shopping. What
a seasoned, reasoned argument you've put out there. And also the fact that they're only 9% of market share is neither here nor there. Everybody knows that Android types don't spend as much on apps as Apple types do.
Yeah, that's true. I'd love to see what that actually looks like. That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, this isn't happening. They'll end up getting a slap on the wrist, as is always the case for Apple, and I'm not sure that's always right, frankly.
No, agreed. You need to hit them where it hurts.
Moving on, news from from Linux land, which we do like to report on now and then here. There's a new Linux kernel. Apparently, Linus Torvalds doesn't like counting up more than fingers he's got, which is why the Linux kernel is only up to 7. It recently changed from 6.9 point something or 6.14 point something. Anyway, 7.0 was out. And one of the features that's going to come to 7.1 is apparently default support for NTFS. This is a kind of blink twice. Is this not a thing that they already had? NTFS support in the Linux kernel? If you've ever jailbooted a Linux machine, then the chances are you've tried to mount the Windows drive that was on there, and it pretty much does it for read-only, but writing is where it comes in this time. That it's difficult to write to NTFS files unless you installed a driver from a company called Paragon Software. Anyway, it's a thing. It's going to be there. It's just going to be built on the Linux kernel. That's great. The fact you'll be able to safely write to an NTFS partition on your hard drive.
It's good, and I think you could get other drivers and things, but this one's going to be quite quick. It's going to be part of the kernel. You'll be able to turn it on with a configuration flag. It is crazy. It isn't already in there, to be fair, but there you go.
File systems are weird, aren't they? When you think about how varied they are, different ways of supporting them, what's there. The NTFS you and I knew from the Windows XP days is probably a different NTFS from what is shipped in Windows 11. It's almost certainly supporting more things these days.
I assume it's moved on. In fact, I think it has. And I'm going to mangle it now. Like, I was trying to format an SD card for upgrading firmware in a car, as you do. And I think I needed it to be 4 gig, and I was struggling to get it to partition, and it's something they changed in Windows 11 and disk management and stuff. So I'm sure it is a different version, because obviously Apple went through all this where they moved to Apple file system, and they did a really good job, didn't they? They swapped it all out, nobody ever noticed, and they got rid of the old one. I wonder if Microsoft have done that over time with NTFS, which is their proprietary format.
I'm going to ask you, was it a FAT card in the SD card, not an NTFS one, because that's more likely.
You're probably quite right. Actually, it probably was FAT, so that I could put it into my car and upgrade the firmware of the computer.
Because FAT was a bit more open, most SD cards support FAT, and most devices read SD cards in FAT format. And you probably went from FAT 16 to FAT 32 because they didn't support a 4 gigabyte volume. In fact,
I think I had a 32 gigabyte card. I had to make it FAT
32,
4 gigabytes to make it all. It was painful. That's all I remember.
Exactly, and there's a format called exFAT as well, which gets around this problem altogether and is more supported on Linux, Mac, etc., etc. In fact, I think you can format things using Mac's file manager in exFAT, even.
Okay, I'm learning.
But NTFS, which is what we started this topic talking about, is probably evolved over time in the same way as you say Apple's one has, as they went from HFS Plus to APFS is what the current thing is. APFS came with all manner of clever things like instant file copies and things like that until you actually changed the thing you were copying. So basically it's symlinks as far as I understand it, although a Linux person will come along and tell me symlinks are different. But the ability to sort of rapidly deduplicate, manage files, manage snapshots, do all that kind of stuff. Modern things were not present in the HFS Plus driver file system. Linux file systems, ext234, I think they're about to go to 5, BTRFS and others. There are so many file system formats out there, it's incredible. And then you've got things like ZFS as well, which I'm not going to call ZFS because I'm British. ZFS, which is a very clever thing from Sun Microsystems or possibly Oracle. No, I think it was Sun Microsystems, which was very good at protective copying and knowing what was going on. It had check bits for all sorts of stuff, so you wouldn't get things like data rot in your file system, bit rot in your file system.
Many, many, many years ago, we were going to get this in macOS, but they announced it, but they never shipped it.
It even came as it was in a beta. Yeah. It doesn't work really well on just one drive is the problem. You need like a NAS or a multiple drives to do it, and it's an extremely clever thing. I ran a NAS for a while with ZFS on it. I can't remember. TrueNAS or one of those comes with ZFS, and you can do all sorts of very clever things with SD drives and spinning disks and backups and clones and copies, and I didn't understand half of it, I will be quite honest. And one of the nice things about NTFS, FAT, BTRFS, and ext4 is they're relatively understandable, but getting them to talk to each other can be challenging, and that's why it's quite good that this is now in the kernel for Linux 7.1.
It is good. We've ended up having a bit of a file system dive all over the show.
We could have a couple of rat holes. We're not trying to make time in this podcast, Chris. Absolutely not. There's lots of news stories.
We've got plenty of content this week. Like, there's more happened in the last 3 days than there's happened in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, we thought we might be struggling, but we're not. Moving on then. There's been a couple of... I've seen this. Drunk Gruber has been talking about a lot this week as well, about App Store ratings being broken. Basically, if you give the app you like a 4-star review, it hurts the developer. 5-star reviews are what you want. If you give 4, it sort of knocks your ratings down. It takes your average down from 5.0 to 4.3, 4.2, whatever it is, as more and more people do it. And it's kind of led to a bit of review bombing, where almost every app you install from the App Store, within seconds you get prompted for a review. And if you don't do the review, you get prompted again very, very quickly thereafter. And I don't know how about you, but I dismiss a lot of these things until I've had time to experience the app.
I do, and the developer can pick where to put this code in, is my understanding. I've never tried it myself, but my understanding is you can actually set it so that you do it maybe once you've played the first level and then pop out for the second level or something. This is quite interesting though, isn't it? And it kind of have this problem a lot now, in that, you know, if you're rating anybody 10, like on Net Promoter Score, if it's not 9 or 10, it's not seen as a positive. Whereas for me, anything over, you know, if it's out of 10, anything over 6 in my eyes is a positive. But that's not the way the system treats it. You know, a lot of scoring systems, you've got to give the best. And so in this scenario, is stars worth having or not? Should it just be heart or not heart kind of thing, which is what they end up doing. Do you remember in iTunes years ago, it used to be stars, and they moved to just yes or no kind of thing. And it feels like that's where we're going, because that's kind of where we're going arbitrary anyway with it. I don't know what you think.
It's the algorithm is the thing. I mean, Steve Troughton-Smith says that it's the difference between an app being highlighted as being a great app as if you have just 5-star reviews. So it behooves the developers, including Apple themselves. You do get asked to rate Apple's apps too, you know, from things from the App Store on 5 stars or not. And I think most people review bomb things. You see it happening with apps all the time in Steam. They get review bombed. Oh, there's some feature I don't like, therefore let's give them all 1 stars. And you know, a lot of us might feel like that about some Apple apps all the time, particularly when they nag me. If the Notes app comes up to nag me to give it a rating, I'm not sure it does. I'm just picking that one sort of randomly. I'm going to give it 2 stars because there's some features in it I don't like. I don't like the fact that it immediately highlights everything as a title case when I move it to the top of the note. If I copy and paste some note from further down, some text from further down, and move it up to the top, then it's highlighting it. The name of my note changes. And I'm like, no, I named it something. Anyway, I give it 2 stars. It goes down in the ratings. It shouldn't be highlighted. And this happens to all sorts. There's lots of apps I genuinely think are excellent, maybe need a little bit of room for improvement. So I'll give them a 4-star rating, but maybe it doesn't support one feature I think it should. It's a 4-star app. I think 4 stars is an excellent app.
I would agree with you. If somebody's giving it 4 stars, I'm like, that's solid. I'll go for that. Like I say, in the middle is, it's okay. It's okay. Anything below middle, so 1 and 2, it's not great. 4, 5, it's good. It's really good. So I think this is dumb, and you're right. The algorithm's broken. Yeah,
I mean, the rating 3 is default. It performs as expected. 4 is better than expected. 5 is perfect. Could not be improved. There's very few apps you're ever going to give a 5-star review to.
If you're being truly honest, I would agree with you. But this is the stupid world we live in now.
Yeah, it is madness. Speaking of madness, I think let's turn to Palantir.
I refuse to read these articles in the show notes.
You refuse to read them? Why?
Because it said Palantir in the title.
Okay, right. Well, I'm going to tell you about Palantir.
Which is summarise where I've got to with Palantir.
Because I've got a bee in my bonnet about Palantir. So Palantir is the big evil corporation, and their chief executive posted a manifesto that, according to the Engadget, and this is their words, not mine, reads like the ramblings of a comic book villain. And I'm just going to scroll. And is it worth reading these? I'll read them all relatively quickly. So this is what the chief executive of Palantir said. Silicon Valley owes a moral debt to the country that made its rise possible. So, because it's in America, Silicon Valley should bow to the government. We must rebel against the tyranny of apps, i.e., we don't like the iPhone, but more than that, shouldn't be the greatest creative crown and glory of our civilization. Other things should be possible. Free email is not enough, i.e., we shouldn't enslave ourselves to things like Gmail, iCloud Mail, things like that. You should pay for the things that you want to. The limits of soft power, of soaring rhetoric alone, have been exposed, i.e., free and democratic societies to prevail, you have to have something more than moral appear. It requires hard power.
Has this guy been drinking from somebody else's Kool-Aid?
The question is not whether AI weapons will be built. It will be who builds them and for what purpose. I.e., we need to do it before everyone else. National service should be a universal duty. I wonder if he did national service. If a US Marine asks for a better rifle, we should build it, and the same goes for software. Okay, I can see your eyes beginning to boggle here. Public servants need not be our priests. We should show far more grace towards those who have subjected themselves to public life. So we shouldn't throw stones at politicians. Not literal stones, but verbal stones. I.e., we're not meant to hold people to account.
Do you think he's trying to get into office or something?
The psychologization of modern politics is leading us astray. Those who look to the political arena to nourish the soul and sense of self, who rely too heavily on the internal life, finding expression in people they may never meet, will be left disappointed. I'm getting bored of reading these now. But you see the path of this? So this is the guy who calls the shots at Palantir. And this is the kind of stuff. Number 14. American power has made possible an extraordinarily long peace. I know. As you read through this, I mean, the rantings of a madman are probably not a million miles from the truth, but this reads like almost the Jerry Maguire thing, doesn't it? He didn't write a memo. He wrote a mission. What did he write? A mission statement. What did he write in Jerry Maguire?
Yeah, it was basically. I think it was a mission statement. It was like let's have some great customers a few great customers rather than
lots of
of slop.
It's that. It's what arrives in your 2 a.m. inbox when your colleague has gone mad, and. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's not mad. Maybe we're misreading his points. Maybe he's being misrepresented in this Engadget article. Doesn't come over well, though, does it?
No, I'm sorry. I can't get behind this. I just don't agree with nearly anything he said.
Yeah, read them yourselves. Draw your own opinions. Obviously, our reading of these may not be the right thing, and everybody should always draw their own opinions. But it beggars belief that somebody in a position of power such as that can use that as a soapbox to voice what they think, companies, Silicon Valley, America, politicians, etc. should be like. You're often told to hey, politicians or film stars don't have an opinion about politics, but this is okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this.
So on that, the NHS makes use of Palantir. However, and I find this really interesting, it's a junior minister, to be fair, but there's a junior minister as part of the health secretary's group saying that maybe we need to call the break clause in the NHS Palantir thing. Maybe.
Maybe we shouldn't have signed it at all.
Zubir Ahmed, you're absolutely right, and we absolutely should break the clause and get out of the Palantir contract because, I mean, it's stable door open, horses bolted. You've already given them all the data, but oh my gosh.
But maybe let's not give them more data.
No. I mean, it's really interesting if you actually read this about, the 3-year Palantir contract for 13 core capabilities, the fact that the NHS won't own any of the IP for that what is generated to wrangle the data together. It's the wrong technical solution. It's all very basic, actually, when you look at what it's doing behind the scenes to bring it together. But because very few British companies will apply for the contract, if they're even aware that the contract is there to be bid for, never mind just signed away during COVID, which is what happened here. It upsets me. So this, in the light of what the chief executive is saying, this seems like a glass of cold water to a man in hell. Surely we should be doing this.
Yeah, we shouldn't even be debating this. Just crack on.
Madness. Speaking of cracking on, should we do the news?
Let's do the news.
So, I heard of Anthropic.
Maybe.
They make Claude AI.
They do make Claude AI, which I've played with, but not done much more than that. But Anthropic getting a lot of good traction. A lot of good messaging about Anthropic. I've used it a bit. The 4.6 model Sonnet has been quite impressive, and the 4.7 model only dropped in the last week, which is meant to be even better, frankly, in terms of... How do these companies iterate? Sorry, how do they iterate so quickly?
They use AI.
Okay. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, they do. Anyway, there's been a story this week about their next generation tool, which is called Mythos, which hasn't been released yet to the general public. However, it has found something like 150 vulnerabilities in Firefox, none of which a human developer wouldn't have been able to find. But Mythos applied to Firefox found a whole bunch of stuff that they're actually using. So they're offering it to companies like Mozilla to look through their code to see if there's potential vulnerabilities. Appears like it's leaked though. So there's a potential unauthorized access to its Mythos model. So which, like I say, is meant to find cybersecurity flaws. But if this has got out to the pirates, to the hackers, to the endgame people, they'll be able to use it to exploit these flaws, potentially before they're beaten out. On one level, you think, okay, but hasn't it always been thus that, that's what hackers want to do, is they want to exploit things. They want to get into systems and they want to steal stuff. Having a nice weaponized AI agent to do it for them, whose whole purpose in life is to do this, is slightly worrying, though.
I agree with you there. I mean, obviously, hackers have been doing this for years. They've been finding exploits. But now they've got something like AI that they can point at, say, Firefox in this scenario, and they can really hammer it and find all these exploits and then exploit them. It is a bit worrying. It's kind of a shame in a way that Claude have shouted about Mythos and everybody knows about it. It's kind of one of those things you wish they could uninvent it. And maybe they made it with the right reasons. That, look, we're going to work with Firefox to make it more bulletproof, or Apple, or Microsoft, and we're going to partner with them and go, look, we've got this amazing tool. It's going to find loads of weaknesses so that you can fix them before attackers find them. So I get the principle of it, but you've got a very dangerous weapon here.
Yeah, and I was wrong. It wasn't 150 exploits. It was 271 vulnerabilities in Firefox. So that seems like a lot for a browser that's been in development for as long as Firefox has. Yeah,
but every time there's so many new features, and these exploits change week on week, right? As new technologies advance, so it's a moving target. So I'm not surprised. But it is worrying that, third parties have got unauthorized access to this tool.
I agree. You know what worries me?
Nope.
What
worries you, Rod?
People looking at their CarPlay screens for their sports scores. That worries me.
So do you know what? So this is now Apple Sports is available to have its widget in your car. And do you know what, Rod? When I was reading this article, I thought exactly the same as you. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, I'm not sure having widgets that tell me the weather and the sports scores is something that somebody should have whilst they're driving their car. I think Apple has been very reserved with CarPlay in that even when you're stationary, you can't, watch a film like you could do in your Tesla. I get that. They've been too reserved, but now they're putting static data out for you to read whilst driving, I think is completely stupid. I'm confused why they're doing this. Fine when you're stopped, but not while you're driving.
100% agree. I think this is dangerous. I think the police would not like this. I mean, you can just about see it in this terrible Verge firewall. I tested the widget during the Crystal Palace v West Ham Premier League match last night, and the time counter for the game didn't progress instantaneously. However, the score obviously did. So, I mean, it shows how exciting football is because it's 0-0. But, I think this is real bad. I think it's really bad that you start doing this kind of thing. Listen to the radio if you're driving and you want to listen to the football. Surely.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. And why do I need a 5-day forecast? You shouldn't be looking at that whilst you're driving either. I think this is dumb.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Apple? As you say, they've been measured about what's been allowed on there up to now, but they can do this kind of thing? Wrong.
Yeah, I don't like this. This is not good.
Should we talk about some cool tech instead?
Ooh, cool tech. Who doesn't like cool tech?
Everybody likes cool tech. That's why they listen to this podcast. So I want to talk about Framework. So Framework had an event yesterday. This is what we were thinking we were going to be talking about this show, actually, until the other news dropped, because we thought it was going to be a quiet news week. Framework had an event yesterday in Los Angeles, and they announced a bunch of stuff, and I just thought it'd be worth touching on what they announced, really.
Do you know what? I'd forgotten about the event until you reminded me. I haven't watched all the way through, but even I was a bit like, oh, wonder what they're going to do. I was a bit interested because I like what they stand for as a company.
Yeah, I mostly do. I'm going to do due diligence at the end of this and talk about another aspect, potentially of Framework. But let's look. So what they announced was the Framework Laptop 13 Pro, some updates to the Framework Laptop 16, the Framework Wireless Touchpad Keyboard, the Framework Oculink Dev Kit, and a laptop sleeve. I feel like that's a deliberately Apple move to announce a sleeve instead of an iPod sock.
Yeah, maybe. I like that the CEO, he's standing in front of some sheets draped over the new stuff they're going to release. That's very Apple-esque, isn't it?
It is. And I quite like Nirav. He seems like a really approachable guy, and he always does the videos himself, and he takes laptops, but he's clearly an engineer who knows what he's talking about. The thing I particularly like, and by all means go and watch the event, it's 35 minutes long, and The Verge have done a 10-minute wrap of just what happened, was announced in 10 minutes, or you can listen to this podcast and we'll update you. But he started and he walked out and said, we're going to announce Framework AI, and everybody laughed in the room, clearly knowing that wasn't what what they were going to do. But fair play to sort of lampoon those companies that are just immediately turning to AI for everything.
Yeah, he should have gone. We're renaming it to Frame AI instead
Yeah.
of Framework. No, I think they look quite an interesting company. Yeah, I was a little interested. So go on, talk us through it.
So I think the most interesting thing for me was the Framework Laptop 13 Pro. So as the owner of a Framework, this is obviously an evolution of the design that I think is 7 years old at this point, the Framework Laptop. The basic chassis of the original Framework Laptop is about that. It came out with an Intel chip, but they've the point is, you can, as you can see in the picture here for those watching the podcast, and we've talked about before, it's modular. There's modules in the bottom you can swap in and out. On the ones up till now, you've had memory and SSDs, and you can get at the motherboard and you can swap them in and out. If you buy another motherboard for your Framework laptop, then they will allow you to 3D print a case in which you can put the guts of the old the motherboard of the laptop and turn it into a computer, if that's what, a server or something, which I think is a really nice touch. So you don't throw anything away necessarily from what's there. It's probably a perfectly serviceable computer. If you don't like the Wi-Fi card, you can just stick in another one. If you don't like the screen, they've upgraded the screen twice now and the webcam. So the point is, it's a modular computer you can update over time. However, this is an evolution of the current model that I have, which is it's behind me. You can just about see it on the bookshelf behind me there on the webcam. And they've made it a little bit thicker to accommodate a bigger battery. I think it goes up to 100 watts now, and a little bit deeper to get in the motherboard for the new new generation of Intel chips. I think it's Panther Lake that's in these two. And as a consequence of the construction changes to the chassis, it's now a lot stiffer as well. So they've actually, for the first time, upgraded the materials in the actual Framework chassis as well as what you're able to put in there as well.
Yeah, I did see it's got a redesigned CNC aluminium chassis. Did you know it's got a haptic touchpad as well?
I was going to say it's got a haptic touchpad as well. So this is good news. I mean, I will say the Windows/Linux trackpads are generally rubbish. They're small. A lot of them are still the diving board design. See the MacBook Neo, and there's not a lot of haptic touch out there. I think Microsoft do it in the Surface, and I think Dell do in some of the better XPSs, where you can't even tell where the touchpad ends and begins on some of the XPSs. Now they're called that again because it's such a big thing at the bottom of it. But I think this is good. That they've upgraded the strength over it. There is quite a bit of flex in a Framework laptop. My version anyway, if you pushed quite hard on the keyboard, unsurprisingly, it doesn't have all the bracing that you get. And it's not all glued together like many modern laptops are. So it needs to be upgradable, so it can't all be sort of wedged into one place. But they've managed to upgrade this in this way.
I think it looks cool. I love they've got some orange accents even when you take the lid off. Like the little tags on the cables are orange and black. Looks amazing.
I mean, they're claiming 20 hours of battery life for Netflix streaming. I mean, this is over what Apple claimed with theirs. However, it is a bigger battery, and I think these new Intel chips, Intel have finally got the message, and they're making some decent power savings in their chips too. So these feel like good numbers to me.
Looking at those, I'm like, is that the same as my MacBook? I've got no idea, but it looks like they've reached numbers where you just don't have to worry about battery anymore.
I do know that it's a different league compared to what I get out of the AMD powered, I think it's an AI 270 is what's in my thing. If I put it on standby and shut the lid, it will die in about 12 hours on standby.
That's a bit like the Switch. The Switch 1 was always horrific.
It's dreadful, and the fans are on, and you really notice the difference going from a Mac to... And I don't think I can blame Linux for that. I think it's just PC laptops. So this looks considerably better.
It looks cool. They're really pushing it as they call it the developer's laptop. Interesting.
Yeah, and you can see why. You can put Windows or Linux on there. I quite like it's a sort of more pro-looking keyboard as well. I quite like that sort of black and grey effect of the keyboard. Usual Framework stuff, so the bigger battery is great. Everything's got QR codes on it. If you want to reorder or replace a part, you scan that QR code. It'll come with a little video guide and tell you how to reorder that. And I just think it looks really quite cool. There's a couple of new cards for it as well. You can get a 10 gig card now, a 10 gig Ethernet card to slap into the side of it if you want.
Yeah, as a person who's got a little bit of 10 gig, I'd be well up for some of that.
Yeah, and crucially, they're actually offering it with Ubuntu out the gate. So you used to be able to order the pre-built version, the DIY version where you put it together yourself, which is the one I bought when I bought my version of this, and then just no operating system or Windows. And I think you spent something like another $200 to get the Windows version. It was a cost on top. So I saved money by putting it together myself. And it's quite a bit of money by the time you do it. I think it's 1,600 quid or something for the fully assembled version. And it's not hard to put together. It's not like you need to put the main board into it. It's literally just put in the SSDs. Well, on my one, they'll be different for this because all the memory is built into current laptops, isn't it? But put in the memory, put in the SSD, put the keyboard on it, and you're good to go. So it's not difficult.
I'd probably quite like that, I think.
Yeah, it's fun, and you get to know your computer as well. Also, they've upgraded the screen to be a touch screen, so that's a first for Framework.
Yeah, that is cool. It's got variable refresh rate as well.
Yep.
Really cool.
Yep. I think it's a solid upgrade. I really do.
Dolby Atmos as well, they're ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, they really are. And that's one of the other reasons they've made the chassis a little bit deeper, is to sort of give you the base that Dolby Atmos sort of requires. So I think this is really good. I'm very impressed that they've done this kind of update. The most impressive thing, though, is that some of this is upgradable into my machine. So if I want to buy the main board and slot it in my machine, I can.
Now that is cool. It's like with your Apple Watch where you can still use the same strap 10 years later. That's cool.
Yeah. So all this kind of stuff. In fact, I think I may have removed the link by mistake, actually. But you can start to buy bits of this and put bits of your existing framework into it. So you could buy the new chassis for about 260 quid, take the screen from your existing framework laptop and put it on there, and just sort of in a modular way upgrade it. You can put a new top case on it, so if you wanted to have the new cool Pro look, you can do that. But the problem is that the bottom case won't accommodate the new battery on my variant of it. So they've given a guide as to how you can upgrade parts from one to the other as well, and there's pricing somewhere on the website for how to do that too. I just think it's super cool.
The fact they've even thought about all of that blows my mind, because they could just go buy a new one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's quite cool. Look, if I was in the market for a laptop, and I'm planning not to buy very much at all at the moment, given everything's costing more, I would definitely be looking at something like this, because this should be right up my street. Because I like the idea that, oh look, I bought it with X RAM today and Y hard drive, but a year down the road I could throw a little bit of money at it and swap some of those components out, because sometimes you do change what you want. I bought my MacBook Air, I'd love to stick 2 terabytes in it when the price comes down. It'd be great just to pop that in there. I don't need to replace anything else, or upgrade the screen, like you say. I think it's genius. I really like their whole idea here. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I'm with you. So if I want to upgrade to the new hotness, I can get a main board for them for 449 quid, and my 1,100 quid, 1,200 quid laptop, whatever it was. I've given it an entirely new lease of life. I don't need to. There's my previous board.
I guess you could always sell your other main board on the bay, or you could repurpose it, as you say.
Or I can turn it into a server. So I'm not going to do this. I just think it's super cool that I can.
No, I'd agree with them. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
cool.
Very cool. They've also upgraded the 16, and I've moved off the page. There's not so many upgrades to the 16. They've stiffened it up a little bit, and they've changed the keyboard around. Why can't I find the framework? Desktop, laptop. Where's 16? There we go, 16. The 16-inch one has a couple of additional features over the 13 in that it comes with a dedicated graphics card. Framework last year did an upgrade to that, so you could get an NVIDIA graphics card and do the upgrade yourself in your laptop. It also comes with a technology called Oculink, which will let you do eGPUs, which Apple used to say they would do for a while, but never really went anywhere with, it must be said. So if you're a graphics developer or a hardcore gamer and want a laptop to do that, then the Framework 16 is probably worth a look. They've got a developer kit for that too as part of these announcements. And you could choose what... there's probably... here we go. So the original 16 would come with this keyboard component, which you could center and then put blanks in each side of it and move your trackpad around and all. And they've come up with a more logical way of doing that, I think. So the keyboard without the number pad can now all be in one piece, so there's a bit less flex in it if you don't want the fancy lights and you want everything centered. I don't think a lot of people actually wanted the keyboard off to one side with a numpad on the laptop and then the haptic, their touchpad as well. So they've just improved the 16-inch one rather than doing major upgrades in the same way that they have to the 13.
But it's good they're iterating, aren't they? Every now and again, I think I would like a 16-inch laptop. Every now and again. I just because you remember me, I used to have the big 17-inch, I think it used to be, and I love that thing. Every now and again, but I walk a huge amount, and I think it would drive me mad carrying it around.
Yeah, I get that. They announced this keyboard, which is a keyboard and and trackpad. I think that's quite useful. It's quite nice to have that kind of thing. Framework desktop might be useful for that. I've always quite liked if you want a keyboard you can sit back with and operate a computer that's attached to a TV or something like that, then these things are quite helpful. I don't know how much it is. I think it's going to be notified when price comes out, but that's pretty cool.
Yep. Agreed. I just like the whole aesthetic.
Yep.
I think they're doing a great job.
So that's all the cool new products, which I think you and I are very for. We like the company's ethos and all the rest of it, but I'm now going to turn to the due diligence a little bit.
Which I'm guessing isn't good.
It's probably not great, but... So, there was... Do you remember me talking about Omarchy from David Heinemeier Hansson?
Yes.
So he's an advocate of framework.
Because he's gone and written his own version of Linux. That's what we're talking about, right? Like all the packages and configuration.
It's not his own version of Linux. He has written some scripts on top of Arch Linux to make some configurations, in his mindset, easier to pull together. And that distribution of Linux is called Omarchy.
Yep.
So it's an Arch Linux variant. It uses a desktop compositor called Hyperland, which is a windowed, it's an auto windowing thing. So every time you open a window, it puts it in place for you rather than you managing your windows. These things are quite common. You get them for the Mac as well. There's things like Aerogel, I think it's called, which does it for the Mac. If you don't want to manage your own windows and you want to do it all on keyboards because you never touch the mouse, you can do that on the Mac too. David Heinemeier Hansson obviously went with that. He was famously an Apple Pro person, and then the App Store put him off, and then he got quite into Framework. Anyway, Framework donated a bit of money to the developer of Hyperland and to David Heinemeier Hansson, or certainly they gave him a laptop. And it turned out David Heinemeier Hansson holds some fairly extreme right-wing views, as talked about previously on this podcast, talking about how London was being overrun with people who weren't white and sentiments such as that. He's a Danish-American, where he gets these attitudes from. It's obviously unacceptable in modern society to think like that. But Framework gave him some money. They also gave the developer of Hyperland some money, and they talk about this as part of their due diligence in this post, which we've linked to in the show notes. But there is a response from the Framework team about where the money goes and why people are calling them, why are people accusing them of supporting far-right groups such as, Heinemeier Hansson and this developer of Hyperland and all the rest of it. And they've said they need to do better in terms of full disclosure. They've sent out large quantities of hardware to Fedora, Bluefin, Bazzite, NixOS, Arch Linux, Linux Mint, Omarchy, and other distros. And they actually fund, somewhere down here we are, the GNOME Foundation, $1,000 a month, the KDE Foundation, $10,000 a year, and Hyperland, €600 a month. So they are being a bit transparent about where that goes. And let's face it, the biggest Linux desktops are GNOME and KDE. So that's where the bulk of that stuff is going. And you can understand why they would want an alternative to Windows to work well on their hardware. So I think they're trying to walk a fine balance between supporting the community and not paying people that absolutely don't deserve it.
It's a real fine line, this, isn't it, though? We have it with cinema, don't we, or music, or insert whatever here, books, because you have to separate the art from the artist sometimes, because you may really enjoy a film and then you find out later the actor or the director or whoever is not a good person, but can you still go and watch that film knowing that? And it's a little bit like this here. I quite like the way that they have come on and done a post and have been, look, we give money here, here and here, and actually they probably do just need to be really explicit about it of what they're shipping, whether it's hardware, cash, events, and just be transparent with it. Because in this world, people, if you're really, into the techie world, tech people go and research things. So I think this is the best thing they can do, is face into it. Yet we have given equipment away, and they just maybe need to think about it a little bit more.
I mean, I appreciate these things are really difficult, and you always want the company you support to do the right thing. I mean, you and I have been disappointed by Apple almost every week, going back a couple of years at this point, for some ethical decision that they've made, or some choice that they've made, or how they've suppressed developers, or all the rest of it, or how they've ice apps in the App Store and all that kind of stuff.
I think you mean we're disappointed in Apple not for an ethical decision, but for an unethical decision.
An unethical. Well, it's
unethical.
All right. So the application of their morals and ethics, I don't think we 100% agree with, and the same could be leveled to a framework here for doing that. It's really difficult, though, isn't it? Because you want to support the hardware, the software, the developer to produce things for your hardware. You're running a business at the end of the day, and you shouldn't be funding people who are unethical, but often people turn out to be unethical down the line. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy that wrote the GNU herd kernel, Richard Stallman. So Richard Stallman was one of the sort of early progenitors of open source. In fact, I think he may have coined the term open source, free as in beer, in the 70s. Famously would go touring around and would only stay in people's houses. He refused to stay in hotels. You had to invite him and you had to put him up in your house. And apparently he wasn't the cleanest guy in the world, and he sort of, would be on your couch for a while. And all manner of things have been leveled at him involving. So, as you say, I think there's a separation from art from artist that you have to do if you want to run a business, whether that's right or wrong to a certain extent. If it's clearly wrong, as Twitter was doing, and the people who continue to support Twitter and advertising on there, you stop it. And maybe when things become apparent like this, then you stop your funding, or you look at the group that's involved, or you divert that funding somewhere more ethical. It's very much down to your corporate and social responsibility as a company to decide where those things go, and the community will respond the way it responds. So I just think it's a difficult thing for companies to walk, isn't it?
I think it is, but I quite like the way they're facing straight into it and have gone, yep, hands up, we have given equipment to these people. And they're not just saying they're giving it to the people that are being called out by them. This is all the companies we're giving stuff to. Yeah. And I quite like that it's showing a bit more. But maybe they need a running page of who they've given to what, where and when.
Transparency. Imagine Apple was this transparent about where their money went.
Where does all that money go, Tim? Where's Tim Cook's island?
Yeah, do you think however much it costs for that trophy for Trump is declared somewhere?
No, that's going to be lumped up into cost of doing business.
So the technology is cool. I think it's down to listeners to make their own judgments about where they want to spend their money, and as is it down to all of us. So if it doesn't fit your politics, don't fund it. If you like what they do, then fund it. That's what it comes down to.
Agreed.
Moving on, and this is just a ridiculous little story that I can't quite believe. I should believe it these days. Apparently, the FCC, is that right? No, that's the Communications Commission. What's the name of the health? FDA is looking at publishing a report that fruit and veg might lead to cancer. Eating fruit and veg might lead to cancer. And as an almost vegetarian or vegetarian, Chris, how do you feel about that? If it's
I am pescatarian, so I'm almost a vegetarian.
Yeah, almost. I was right the first time.
Yeah. And look, I made my choice just because I just didn't fancy eating meat anymore. That was as much that went into my decision. It just doesn't really appeal. I don't know. I think, if I'm being honest, I think there's a lot of things out there that can give you cancer, or you may already have it. You don't even know about it because of decisions already made. So I think it's a tricky one, but I think this is bonkers. My view on most eating is you need to eat a relatively well-balanced diet, whether that's a bit of fruit, a bit of veg. You should be a bit of meat maybe for me, but obviously I've given up meat. But well-balanced diet, you shouldn't eat any one or the other more. You know what I mean? I think if you cut out all of one thing, is that right? But when you read this article, it's absolutely bonkers because they didn't have a control case. They didn't, they did not do a proper study. They've just sampled some people rather than having a base set of people to balance against to see the effects of all of this. It's just madness.
It's a conference abstract. So conference abstracts, as somebody who submitted a few in my time, are semi-peer reviewed in the sense that whoever is reviewing the abstracts will have a quick look at it. If it meets the goals of the conference, then they'll let it in generally, as opposed to a research paper, which should be properly peer reviewed by at least 2 or 3 experts in the field who will look at it, look at the conclusions it comes to, and either approve it or reject it. More often than not, they reject them straight out of hand, depending on how prestigious the journal is. It will depend how much attention is paid to that by the reviewers. So conference abstracts aren't held to the same level of peer review as an actual research paper, and again, that's dependent on journals slightly as well. But their conclusion showed that younger non-smokers who eat a higher quality of healthy foods than the general population are more likely to develop lung cancer, from 166 people with no controls. So it's nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy. But like I say, I think nobody knows what is good and bad for you, and maybe it depends on the person as well. I think there's a lot of factors here, but this whole study, when you read that article, is just crazy. So
it's ridiculous that the FDA would even consider this kind of thing, but nothing surprises me anymore. But media. So I don't.
Come on. Let's go on to some good stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to talk about in media, other than I'm going traveling. What's my plan for traveling? I'm going to be sitting on flights for multiple hours. I have downloaded 7 seasons of Taskmaster. I'm going to fire up my iPad and I'm going to sit and enjoy some of the old seasons of Taskmaster.
And are you doing a me? Are these seasons you've seen before?
Of course I've seen them all. I've seen every season of Taskmaster multiple times. The joy of Taskmaster is being in season 21, that I've forgotten quite a lot of what's happened. And I know this works because I took a 9-hour flight to Chicago and I watched Taskmaster for 8 of those 9 hours and it was terrific.
Fair enough. I watched 2 films, didn't I, on my plane trip recently. So fair play to you. That's a lot of Taskmasters to take. What you should take though on your holiday is a Ubiquiti travel router rod, so you can dial back into your home. I love this thing. Did I mention that?
You did, and I think that was one of your things of the week one time. They're back in stock this week actually, but I haven't got time to get one delivered before I go jetting off. So that was sad face, sad trombone.
Sorry. I just love the thing. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I don't need one because I've got Tailscale and I can connect to my wherever I am anyway.
Do you know what, though? I think this is something that a lot of tech shows don't do enough of, is they tell you how great something is, but they never then circle back to it like a year later. And often what you find, they've largely gone on and started using something else, where they get a freebie or they're reviewing something else or they want more experience. But I think sometimes it's quite healthy to go, actually, that thing that you spent some money on, do you still use it? Does it live up to the promise that you were sold and all of that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and we should revisit your travel router at some point if you're happy with it. And I do quite fancy getting one, even though I've got a GLINet travel router. However,
you've already got something akin to it.
I pulled it out, and it's not being updated anymore, which concerns me because a router should always have the latest firmware and all the rest of it on there. And it's a bit slow, so maybe I'm finding reasons to get one. As I say, I think if it appeared in stock 3 days ago, and I could have been confident of it getting here from wherever they come from as the European distributor, I might have ordered it because it's what, 75 quid?
Yeah, around that.
Yeah, so no,
I think mine came from the European store. And I paid in euros.
Yeah, that'd be about right. So yeah, that's it's a fair point, but I'm fairly comfortable. My software VPN is going to keep me out of trouble and be able to connect to my house anyway. However, a connection to the internet is not much use on a plane in most cases, particularly Jet2 or Ryanair or whoever, who definitely don't have in-flight Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I went up one recently that had in-flight Wi-Fi, but I didn't even try it because I actually quite enjoyed having 5 hours without it.
Yeah, I mean, is this media? I suppose it kind of is. Yeah,
that's what you end up doing on the plane, though, isn't it? Is media.
I have used in-flight Wi-Fi. Jet2, well, no, not Jet2. JetBlue, when I flew to America, had completely free in-flight Wi-Fi. It was amazing, all the way to from Heathrow to Boston. That's quite good. The only thing they'd ask you not to do is to make phone calls. That was the only thing they didn't want you to do. But anything else was fair game.
Do you know what? If I was on there and somebody made a phone call, I may kill somebody.
I was taking pictures of the island I'm from in Scotland because we flew over the top of it and sent it to my parents as I flew over it.
No, that's a good use of it.
Thank you. I was pleased with that. Anyway, Taskmaster's on there, and I've also downloaded. I don't know if I'll get a chance to watch it. The film you tried but failed to watch last week, One Battle After Another.
I was about to say it's one battle after another is where you're going with this. I don't know. Maybe not a film to watch with people next to you. But
okay. And Godzilla minus.
It's not crazy explicit, but it's just there's themes.
Okay, and Godzilla minus one is the other thing, which I may or may not get around to. I've heard good things about it. I'm not a big fan of Godzilla films, but apparently it's not really a Godzilla film because Godzilla's not about Godzilla. It's about nuclear explosions and Japan being attacked by the United States. That's actually what Godzilla is, the basis of it. I'm told. Not that I'm good at reading subtext in movies. In the same way, Jaws is about divorce and not a shark. But there you go.
Okay. Maybe I need to rewatch Jaws.
Apparently that's what it's about.
Okay, I'll take it with it.
Games.
Very,
very quickly, you and I touted the benefits of Xbox Games Pass when we both had Xboxes. It seemed to take over the world for a little bit of time, actually. And I maintain, when we recommended it, it was £14 a month and you got everything all of the time in any game you ever wanted. Fantastic. However, things not going so well for Microsoft, it would seem. They've cut the overall price of Xbox, but new Call of Duty games will no longer be on the service on day one. So this was a big deal for the last 2 rounds of Call of Duty. Lots of people like Call of Duty. You made a face, Chris, but lots of people do. It's not going to be there on day one. So Black Ops 7 and whatever came before Modern Warfare 3, possibly. No, Black Ops 6 came before Black Ops 7. And Modern Warfare 2 were all on Games Pass day one for Xbox customers. There was a lot of furore over this, you remember. Nintendo and others got quite upset. Sony got quite upset about this being part of Game Pass and part of Microsoft Studios. So I think this is them stepping back from that a little bit.
Yeah, and I made a bit of a face because I was thinking, I'm not surprised, right? Like, you probably want to do what they do with films. You can go watch the film at the cinema. Then you can go and buy it like on Apple's store or Amazon store. And then after that, it comes to a streaming service. And they kind of need to do the same with games, because otherwise, how are they going to make back some money? You know, for your hardcore gamers, surely they're going to want it on day one, and they're just going to buy this package for £16 a month. So I'm not surprised. I mean, it's nice to hear something's actually coming down in price. When's Netflix going to do this? When's insert Disney, another here? And I largely cancel all these services because I've fed up them all, get costing more and more, and we're not really using them enough. And that's why I buy it for a month. I get my $20 worth of use out of it, and then I cancel it. So I'm not surprised this is happening. And I think Game Pass was a good purchase, but it's just gone up and up. And this is the problem with the services. You get wedded to it, and then you can't get off it.
Yeah, and I think it devalues all the games that are in there. If I buy a game, I focus on that one game and I play it.
Yep. And I'm going back to this thinking with my music, as we've been chatting about today. So, and we cover that maybe another week.
Yeah, I think we'll do that another week. So that was all on games. Main show, Rod's iPhone. What was I going to say? Traveling. So as I'm coming to traveling, I have noticed I've got some issues with my iPhone 15 Pro Max. Not the least of which is how dodgy the USB-C connector is.
Have you got a MagSafe puck?
I have. However, that's not very helpful when I'm out traveling around in the world. And the battery is not what it was either, because it's almost a 3-year-old phone at this point. So I have noticed so this is a long way of saying I spent a long 20 minutes considering should I get myself a new iPhone this week. And I've been through a whole thing about, maybe I should just spend 300 quid and get an iPhone 20, just a bog standard 16 from last year, because they're only 350 quid. Or do I just bite the bullet and go the full almost 1100 quid for a 17 Pro? And I haven't done any. I know you're going to show the orange phone rising from the deep. It's a funny time of year to buy a new phone, isn't it? You think you almost want to wait to September, having got to April, but it's making me nervous.
Sorry, I was thinking, which is odd. I don't know what to suggest in this scenario. I'd love to ship you a spare phone, but I haven't really got any, because as soon as I get a spare phone, they go down to the children or the grandparents, and they usually end up with regs at the end that are usually battered with no battery. What would I do if I was you? Would you not take an Android phone?
I might take an Android phone, and this is genuinely a thing. I was looking at so giffgaff do refurbished phones. I've bought a few refurbished phones in the past. I think they're great. They work really well. My iPhone, my last iPhone I bought my youngest daughter was from there in their good as new section. Saved a good couple of hundred quid off that. And the Pixel 7 that I use as my now smashed back Android phone also came from there for not a lot of money. So I can get a Samsung Galaxy S25 for 350 quid. So that's last year's.
That's quite a lot of phone, isn't it?
It's a huge amount of phone. Or an iPhone 16 standard for about the same amount of money. So last year's, not flagships, because that's an Ultra or a Pro, Ultra and Samsung Pro and Apple stock, are not an awful lot of money for a 1-year-old phone that, let's face it, would get you over a year's use out of probably, and then go for the new hotness flagships next year. But I'm genuine. That feels like the logical thing to do, and I sat with my finger over the buy button, repeatedly going, that's what I'm going to do. And I haven't done it yet. Instead I've bought another external battery that's a MagSafe 1 charging speed, so it only charges at 7.5 watts or something like that. So, but it's enough to get me over a hump if it goes wrong.
Yeah, that's possibly where I might go if I was you, because you've only got 6 months to go. Part of me was thinking, could I find my little MagSafe white puck, but it's then light. Is your phone Lightning?
No, it's USB-C. It's 15.
It's USB-C, yeah, because I've got the Lightning thing, and I was like, I could send you that, because that was fantastic.
I've effectively bought one of them. It was 16 quid.
Yeah.
So it's.
I'd do that for now.
I'm going to go with that one now, but you can see why the attraction for buying last year's almost flagship for 350 quid, even if it just got you through a year, is not a bad shout.
Yes, and it's not a huge amount of money for something you use all the time.
All the time. Should we talk about the main news?
Well, yeah. Now you've talked yourself out of giving Tim more money.
Yeah.
Tim is now stepping down as Apple CEO, which has been rumoured for ages. I think we've spoken around it, and it feels like it's been a long time coming. And fair play, I think what they've done is they've soft pedalled it, leaked it out so that it doesn't spook investors and all the corporate shenanigans that has to happen. So it's great they've announced it and they're doing it in a timely fashion. And I was reflecting upon this. I think Tim's nailed it because he's got Apple to their 50th anniversary. He's going to intro WWDC, I guess, and then he's going to step back and let his successor take over for all the new iPhones that are coming and all those amazing products. And I think it feels like they're doing a good job on the transition from a high level.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, isn't it? So we didn't explicitly say that the next CEO of Apple will be John Turnus. Obviously, dresses from the same tailor as Tim Cook in this particular picture, other than different taste in shoes. He is a long-time employee of Apple. He's been there more than 25 years, I think. So probably had some sort of interactions with Steve Jobs back in the day as well. His degree is in engineering, I think. Is it in engineering?
Yep.
Which is that's where he's come from. He's been involved with materials design. He's been involved with lots of the products, AirPods, and all sorts of things like that. So he's got cred. He's been promoted inside of the company. We've seen him increasingly in Apple videos recently, like the launch of the Mac Mini, of the new Mac Mini you and I are using right now. He was involved with that. I think the iMac, the MacBook Neo.
Yeah, no, I was about to say Neo. So they've been warming the world up to him. I'd love to know how they've picked the hardware guy to be the next CEO, because being in charge of hardware is one thing, being in charge of the whole company and everything else that comes with it, all the corporate stuff, the HR stuff, the strategy, policy setting, all of those things. It's super interesting how they've ended up with this person, and I don't know him that well. I don't think any of us do, but I really hope he's the right fit.
I guess we'll find out. Back to what you were saying a minute ago, at least he has been part of a succession plan, as opposed to Tim, who kind of just got it thrust onto him when Steve got pancreatic cancer and couldn't do it anymore. So, there's been a lot of turmoil, I guess, in Apple CEOs in the initial days, as it went from, it was never Jobs to begin with, but he got ousted from the company by John Scully, who he'd recruited from Pepsi Cola, and then there were a bunch of people until Gil Amelio brought Steve Jobs back, and when they purchased Next, he became interim CEO, and then him and Johnny Ive just went on absolute tear of knocking out of the park with every product they released, as they went from the iMac to the iPod to the iPhone to the iPad. That run, and then the initial Apple Watch, was just an incredible run of form and transformed the company from not a small company, but they were, what was it, famously 30 days from going out of business or something like that when Steve came back?
Maybe not 30, but yeah, it wasn't a lot.
A couple of months from going out of business. Steve came back. And Tim Cook was part of that resurgence, from the start.
Yeah, and he was the operations guy, right? So the operations guy ended up becoming the CEO. So again, probably out of his wheelhouse on a lot of areas, having to worry about things he never had to worry about before.
Yeah, operations is, just-in-time delivery, making sure the supply chain is right, making sure that Apple built their own stuff in the factories that weren't being built by other people. And there's no denying, as an operations guy, I think Tim Cook was probably unrivaled, because he took the products that Steve and Johnny and all the other, including people like John Turnus, were producing at Apple, and turned them into real things that could be in consumers' hands very, very quickly at a very high standard, and built to that Apple quality level. There's no denying that the MacBook Pros you and I have, and Apple Macs and phones, and with the exception of my dodgy USB-C port, are very, very solid pieces of hardware. Software aside, they're very solid pieces of hardware. And I think that's a testament to Tim Cook probably getting out of the way and letting the engineers do the work, because he's not a product guy.
Yeah, that was quite a saying early doors with Tim. He's not a product visionary. Yeah. And you need to make sure you've got the people around you to do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think... So there's lots of positives about Tim. There's lots of negatives about Tim's Apple as well. The fact that Trump came out to support his retirement was interesting. Let's face it, the amount of money that Apple puts into the US economy, I'm not surprised that people know who the CEO of Apple is. This is they're big shoes to fill, though, isn't it? And again, I think let's stay out of the ethics of some of the things that Apple have decided recently. The products under Tim, I'm going to say, were the AirPods, were the sort of real evolution of the Apple Watch towards us to becoming a fitness tracker more than just, as it was launched, and the Apple Vision Pro. And I don't think the Apple Vision Pro has been a great thing.
No, true. If you look in the notes, though, I did put in a link to 11 things that have happened since Tim became CEO. And one thing I just wanted to pause on, I think they had a bad patch, right? The late 2016, 17, 18, 19, right, wasn't Apple's finest pitch. But ever since they've gone to Apple Silicon, the last 5-6 years, they've been on an absolute tear again, where they've launched not necessarily amazing products, but just really good, solid iterations year on year on year. And like the laptops are so good now, the desktops are so good, unless you want a Mac Pro. But do you know what I mean? They've been on a real tear. They've really sorted out a lot of the lineups, and he's actually transitioning to turn us in quite a good way, I think. But why don't we quickly just whiz through this list?
I've got a problem with it. I got a problem with this list. I very quickly scroll through it. I think the thing Tim is best known for is services.
Yeah, quite possibly. This is more product-orientated list.
This is products, but services have been the category that's only ever grown since they've introduced it, as far as I can see. And the hint of that was Apple TV, maybe, but all the services are really what Tim's stamp on the company is, which for an operations guy is incredible because you don't need to do anything. You just charge people money.
You do, but equally, though, you need to put, like for Apple TV, how much money have they invested in Apple? As TV is in the service, not as in the app or the hardware. But do you know what I mean? They've had to put all that mechanics in place. They didn't just buy a company like they did for Apple Music and then pivot it. They set up from the ground up. They started building out a studio. They've started making films and TV shows and all of that. And that's probably the biggest service that they've... And we don't obviously know the breakdown, but it feels like it's one of the biggest services where they've really started from nothing. They haven't acquired anything. They've started from nothing and grew it.
I don't know. They bought TV companies. If you look at things like For All Mankind, it's got Sony badges on it and all that kind of stuff. They've just got a couple of clever people in a room and packaged that together. I think services as a whole isn't just Apple TV. It is the music. It is the news. It is paying for your iCloud backups. It is Fitness Plus. It is Apple Care. It's things like that they've bundled together.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
And if you look at the charts, as we do every quarter, the one that always grows is services. Because how many people have got Apple products and how many of them want to get rid of that 5 gigabyte warning?
Yeah, and services always looks like a triangle because it's just going up, and a steep triangle. So
I would remember Tim Cook as the operations guy and very quickly the services guy. But let's fire through these. Apple introduced Siri in 2011. Well, that's not great.
Obviously, that was done underneath Steve.
That was Jobs,
But it launched literally just as he passed away.
Yeah.
And then it was then straight into Apple Maps, which obviously was famously horrific. But actually, if you look at Apple Maps now, it's got pretty good.
It's okay.
I really like it. And in fairness to Apple, one thing they've done over the last 10 years is they've invested in the technologies underneath. We spoke about file systems earlier. They've obviously launched Swift. They've invested like in how Apple Maps draws all the graphics and everything. And they've been slowly iterating it so that they don't end up like they did, where they didn't invest in the underlying infrastructure of the operating systems. They've actually chipped away at them year on year to modernize them and bring them on. Whereas obviously the big problem Apple got into in the 90s is that the underlying infrastructure of the operating system aged out in spectacular fashion and they held on to it for too long. And it does feel like they've done a lot in the background, which whether that's Tim approving that or not, I don't know. But there's some very clever people there that are making sure that the underpinnings remain current and are upgraded.
Yep. Beats by Dre. I'm a bit meh on Beats by Dre. I think if you're a Beats by Dre customer, then that's fine. I don't think...
Yeah, but this was also the Apple Music.
I agree. You got Apple Music as well, but you could also say that's hung on a bit too long. And actually, before we get all the way through this is going to be my criticism of Tim's reign, is things hang on too long.
Oh, yeah, that was bad. I agree. And I think they've just started fixing that in the last 5 years, where they're not keeping last year's models around as much. And it's only very recently, ignore the Apple TV, but do you know what I mean? They're actually starting now to not keep things around and replace, and they've started breaking that cycle.
I think Steve did this best when he killed the iPod Mini and introduced the iPod Nano, and that's how you do a product transition.
And also they were really good, weren't they? Though they'd introduce a new product, and the whatever MacBook would flip, and then you wouldn't hear the other one would literally be dead to them. Like they'd be forgotten about.
And you can still walk into Walmart in America and buy M1 MacBook Airs, and that's wrong.
Yeah, agreed on that.
So Beats by Dre, the Apple Watch, which was definitely a damp squib when it first launched, even though you and I got them. I think it's and both you and I wore them for many, many years, and now we're not. But I think for the people who want that, it's fine.
But you do see them everywhere.
It's a deeply unexciting product these days, though.
Agreed.
First company to hit became the first US company to hit $1 trillion. Not a surprise, given they have several licenses to print money.
Now it's a $4 trillion company.
Yeah, this is a big deal. AirPods Pro. I was quite skeptical about AirPods Pro. I didn't think they'd fit in my ears. I didn't believe the noise cancelling would work. I thought they'd fall out and I'd lose them all the time. I almost only did once. They're terrific products, and the enhancements and evolutions to 2, 3 have been out the park. The original earpods weren't great. They did fall out of my ears. They didn't sound very good. The only nice thing about them was they had inline remotes, which I think were even on the previous version of Apple headphones. They used to come with everything. Do you remember you'd get them with your iPod, you'd get them with your phone, you'd always get a set of AirPods. Headphones, anyway. But the AirPods were terrific. The AirPods Pro are terrific. I'm less convinced about the Maxes, but I haven't tried them. Maybe I should be convinced. But this is genuinely a great line of products. How many AirPods do you see in people's heads?
Oh, they're everywhere. They're fantastic. They're so well made. They are absolutely fantastic devices.
Apple TV, a bit of a rocky start with Carpool Karaoke. It's got, that was its first program, and then they did Planet of the Apps, which was like,
that was awful.
Yeah. So
Apple have got form for starting with the turkey and then keep iterating, and they get there in the end.
They're better than Microsoft at it, that's for sure. The Apple TV is it's now a must-have service, and it's one of the things that keeps me paying my Apple One subscription. Is there's enough good shows on there that I want to keep watching it. Although, folks, Criminal Record is back this week. Don't watch it; it's dreadful.
Not Russian.
iPhone 10 was released for Apple's 10th anniversary in 2017. A landmark phone, up there with the original iPhone and the iPhone 4.
It was stellar phone, and the way they did the interface of no home button, everybody copied it. That we're still using the same way now of little swipe up. So natural, really well done.
Yeah, and that change in form factor, they clearly didn't have entire faith in it, because they did release the iPhone 8 with a home button at the same time, or maybe they just wanted to offer something cheaper.
I think they had to tackle both ends of the market.
Terrific phone though, and I was sold the second I saw with the Face Unlock.
Yeah, Face ID. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Apple began bringing its own in-house chips in 2020. This has been absolutely the biggest change, I think, to Apple. The fact that the same chips that are in phones can now power a MacBook Neo. When they started putting M1 in iPads, even though it was vastly overpowered for what that device can do, and just the battery efficiencies. Genuinely, one of the things that stops me going all in Linux is the fact that I know I can use my Mac for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours doing intensive things, and it just keeps ticking. And that is just incredible to this day.
And there's no fan. Well, depending on which model you've got, but on a lot of models, there's no.
There's a fan in mine. I have heard it.
Okay.
Yeah. MacBook Pros have fans. So I think the Apple Silicon is absolutely a win.
100%. And the transition was amazeballs. The whole thing was fantastic.
And this Apple Vision Pro was absolutely a lose. I just don't see any benefit in that product at all. And you've tried one and I haven't, and maybe I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on it, but I don't get it.
Part of me would love one. I'd love to have one just to watch a film every now and again, but I'm not ponying up $3,000 or whatever it is.
If it was £1,000 and had incredible software support, and you could do X, Y, and Z with it, like we talked 2 weeks ago, it's only just had the Steam app. So if you want to play games in it, you can only do that now. I mean, they've done that deal with Sony to be able to use the Sony VR controller. So where's the games? What's going on?
Yeah, I wonder if they're doing more on it. Are they going to? I don't know. I wonder. They've had the damp squid. Are they going to turn it around?
And the MacBook Neo released this year, which is, should have done it years ago. Frankly, they should always have offered a cheaper Mac. And that is the product that gets people who are looking at a Windows laptop and going, "Why would I spend £800 on this crappy piece of plastic? We can have a well-built, well-maintained, software-supported, runs cool, good battery life, nice colors laptop. Why would I?"
There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, there's a couple of dodgy ones as well. But I 100% think the thing that should be on there is services, because that's Tim.
Yeah, I think they focus more, just like I say, on product.
Yep. Very briefly, there's a couple of other announcements that happened as well. The first one was Johnny Srouji, who is the guy who brought Apple Silicon, the engineer that brought Apple Silicon into it, has been named Chief Hardware Officer. We see Johnny quite a lot in a lot of the Apple media when they're announcing new products. He obviously knows the silicon inside and out because he's the guy that did it. In fact, I think it was his company they bought to bring it on board.
I think you are 100% correct. And he's clearly a very clever person. So, I'm pleased for him. But I do wonder whether he did threaten to leave and they've gone, stay.
I wonder about all that. I think when they decided that Tim was going to go this year and then leaked the story to the Financial Times, presumably, and gave Gurman some inside knowledge of what was going on, I think they were moving the deck chairs around a little bit, and that's why we saw the back of Alan Dye as well. That I presume Alan Dye wanted some sort of role like Chief Design Officer or something like that and wasn't offered it. So I got to say, don't let the door hit you on the way out, Alan. I'm still not loving. You and I were talking about a bizarre bug I've got in contacts on my Mac just before this started on my fairly standard non-beta Mac. Bye, Alan. If John Turnus can get and make the software work as well as the hardware does under Johnny Sergi, and let's face it, John Turnus was probably responsible in this kind of role before Johnny took over it. Fantastic. Good luck to him.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, I've nothing but good to say about the man who brought us all these amazing chips. Like, fantastic.
Yeah. And the last thing to say is Tim Cook is staying on as the board. What was he? Chair of the board? Executive chairman. Presumably to manage the lobbying and to take all the flack for having to deal with Trump and other governments around the world. And I think that's a smart move. They can separate that roles. He can keep doing the political thing. Somebody's got to take one for the team. And, Turnus can get on with cranking out great products.
I'm not being funny, though. If you were 65 with all the money in the world, wouldn't you just want to go and do your own thing?
I think Tim loves it. I think he's come to love it.
Maybe. And you do see it. Some people retire and they end up doing nothing, and they have brain rot and body rot, so maybe he needs to keep busy, which is fair. It
is fair. Apparently John's first job is using is overhauling all the AI stuff within Apple. Good luck with that, John. I think we've got a John and a Johnny we're going to have to talk about now, as well as Johnny Ives. There's a lot of J's in the Apple executive team now, so just to be careful with that. And I think somebody's got to take all this stuff in hand, so I'll be interested to see. I mean, he's got Tim looking over his shoulder to a certain extent. I hope he lets him get on with it.
I would imagine so, but I wonder, has some of this transition already started? Do you know what I mean? Have they started building him up so that actually it's a non-event when September comes, because it's September the 1st, it all happens.
Fair. I think that'll do us. App of the week?
Yeah, app of the week. What is it?
My Framework 13 laptop. I think I mentioned it before. I don't think it was an app of the week at any point, but obviously we've been talking a lot about Framework today. It's made me pick mine up and have a look at it and appreciate it for what it is. They've done a couple of the little videos. This is the thing I was talking about before, about how you take my version of the laptop and you upgrade it to a pro version. So if you're at all interested in how the upgrades go, this is it. They kind of do a race, the founder against one of the product managers here, in doing the upgrades. So I think that's quite a fun thing to do. I'm always very impressed when they do these videos of the devices that are in the background, because there are some iconic things in there. So one laptop per child, which was an initiative we've talked about before. An original Mac. You've got a Playdate. You've got a Game Boy. Is that a Game Boy Color even? I'm not sure.
Might be a Color.
Yeah. And a couple of old classic computers and things like that. And obviously they wear their inspirations on their sleeve, and fair play to them. So I just think this is good product support.
This is clearly a company, though, that loves computers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's who you want making your computers, isn't it? They were inspired by these devices behind them, and that's what the energy they're putting into their laptops. So full disclosure aside, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, no, agreed. And yeah, fantastic. I will take a look.
Yep, do so. And if you are interested, you can flip through these parts in the show notes for what you need to do to upgrade a standard Framework laptop. So I can change the chassis of mine and put the bits into the new chassis and then upgrade the other bits later on for 249 quid.
Genius. That is cool.
It's super cool. Thing of the week.
So my thing of the week is just a simple website. I've been setting up getting some of my old MP3s out, and I didn't know what that pop-up was. And this is just a website where you can go and search for an artist or an album and get the album art, and it's all really high quality. You can search Apple Music and Amazon and various other ones, but you can get really high quality ones. You can even get the animated ones, which I've steered away from because they're massive, but I want to just sort my MP3s out, and so I've been doing that, and there you go. That was it.
Very cool. Very cool. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website, waitfromsleep.com, and click on the YouTube link, or drop us an email, waitfromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.